We're fortunate to have with us today Bill Boni, who is Vice President and Corporate Information Security Officer for T-Mobile. Bill Boni is a founding father of the cybersecurity field and has been recognized by many awards at the national level and is a much sought after speaker in my community. Bill is going to give us an opportunity to look at what cybersecurity is like in industry, what are the things he's concerned about. So I'm going to welcome Bill, and thank you very much for your time today, Bill. I know how busy you are.
It's a pleasure to be here, Barbara.
Thank you. So Bill, could you describe a little bit about your role here at T-Mobile, what it is a corporate information security officer does?
Well, the fundamental mission of my organization is to protect the company's brand by safeguarding the networks, the information, the systems that customers rely on to deliver the communication services that we provide to them. So our job is to protect, detect, and respond to threats that could disrupt that delivery of communication services.
Well, it's an awesome responsibility for a company the size of T-Mobile, Bill, with its international reach. I think a lot of our students are going to wonder how you prepared yourself for this position. How did you get here? What were the steps you took?
Wow. Well, it's been a long road to arrive in a position like this. I've been doing this kind of work literally for decades. My undergraduate degree started with security background, but I began my practical experience working as a military intelligence officer focused on counterintelligence. And truthfully, that background is still relevant to the challenges that I'm dealing with at the level I'm operating today. But over the course of the intervening years, I've worked in banking industry, I've worked in biotechnology, I've worked in the defense industry and engineering technologies. And immediately prior to coming to T-Mobile, I spent almost 10 years working at Motorola as the Global Chief Security Officer responsible for the full range of security risk issues for that global organization. So I've been at T-Mobile now for about 8 years, it'll be 8 years November, and it's been a very exciting time because of the challenges both in the wireless communications industry, but even more so in the changes in the cybersecurity responsibilities and the issues that consumers, customers, shareholders, and employees are aware of.
So Bill, was there any particular educational choice or program that was particularly helpful in getting you to where you are now?
Well, I would say in addition to the counterintelligence training that I had as a young military officer, I took an MBA later when I was working in the defense industry in Southern California. And that taught me to think about business risk issues using a quantitative and qualitative basis as opposed to being purely technologically focused. So I think as cyber technologies, communication technologies have become increasingly important, vital actually, to the flow of commerce, that business perspective combined with a technology perspective allows us to make better decisions and to serve our shareholders most effectively.
So in addition to your background in Intel, was there any one particular assignment after that you took that was particularly helpful in getting you to this place?
I would say surviving 10 years at Motorola was very helpful too, because it was the company that invented cell phone technology. So I was there long after they invented it, I have to admit, but still working in the cellular industry, understanding the challenges from both the handset as well as the infrastructure, because Motorola at that point had been involved with all of those, prepared me to undertake the role of supporting a company like T-Mobile more effectively.
So you've had a number of awards and recognition. The one that comes to mind is the Luminary Award that you were just given. What was that all about, Bill?
Well, it's a recognition of, basically it's a Lifetime Achievement Award for cybersecurity professionals. So other folks that have received it, for example, were Howard Schmidt, who was the original cybersecurity advisor at the national level. It recognizes, again, an ongoing level of communication and engagement and support of the development of the cybersecurity profession and industry over decades. And so it was quite rewarding to receive that award in Chicago 2 years ago.
That's terrific. So as these students are thinking through preparing themselves, do you have any specific recommendations you might make, just based on your experience?
Well, as you progress in your career, I think it's increasingly important to bring that business acumen and communication skills into the mix, along with a solid grounding in the technical fundamentals, because the folks that are most effective in dealing with the range and diversity of issues that we face as organizations today can switch between those different domains of competency and leverage the most important elements that are relevant to the problem at hand. When dealing with engineering or development staff, probably most important to have that technical grounding. When dealing with managerial staff, it's probably important to have that business acumen and the ability to articulate the issues, not in technical terms, but in what does it mean to the business? What does it mean to customers? How does this impact our brand? But you can't say that any one of those is most important, because it depends where an individual's at in their career and their individual mission accountabilities within their organization.
So looking at T-Mobile and how you organize the function here, how have you put it together, Bill? I think it comes as a surprise to people as they move up the ladder that not everybody reports to you. You're managing in a very different way. So how did you structure this function?
Well, we learned a long time ago in MBA classes that there's something called the span of control. So when you have over 100 plus people in an organization, it's very difficult to have everyone directly reporting into a senior leader. So teams are organized that are focused on key domains of functional accountability. In our case, for example, we have a governance, risk, and compliance team that helps us ensure that the business operates the technologies that we utilize consistent with existing legal, regulatory, and contractual guidance. We also have a security operations team that deals with the detection and response to cyber incidents. This is where we would deal with intrusions, hacking, or disruptions of our services that are caused by cyber adversaries. We also have security design and engineering teams that support the new projects as we upgrade our technologies or replace and enhance the risk issues that could be introduced if they're not managed are very significant. So having engineering talent that can be there with the development teams, help them make the right choices to minimize the risk while still accomplishing the business objective, is where we can add additional value. We've also got relationships inside the Government Affairs Office, because increasingly the legal and regulatory dimensions of cybersecurity cross many boundaries, state, local, and federal. And so having that kind of functional expertise and direct support so our teams can make good choices helps us be effective there. And lastly, as the technologies continue to evolve rapidly, it really requires us to have a real attention to what's the emerging capabilities are, as well as emerging risk. So the Cybersecurity Technology Office helps us do that by focusing both on risk and reward. Are there new dangers that we need to be considering in our plans for the years and time ahead? Are there new solutions that would help us be more effective or more efficient in accomplishing our ongoing mission responsibilities?
So Bill, the case that we're making in this course to the students is that while there are commonalities across all sectors, there are differences too, from military to government to industry to academia. From your perspective, what are the things that are unique to industry?
Well, again, in our case, in the case of the place I've worked during my private sector career, the shareholder value and protecting the brand of the organization become very important roles for the security organization. And that differs somewhat. If you're in a governmental entity, it's not quite the same focus area. We have to be profitable. We have to deliver the services that our customers expect, regardless of what industry segment we're in. If we take on an exorbitant amount of security and protection and impede our ability to adapt and utilize new capabilities to serve customers, then we may find ourselves irrelevant or obsolete and out of business. So you have to balance the ability to protect the organization while maintaining productivity of the organization. And that's more of an art than a science at this point. It does require judgment, experience, and a full awareness of the range of issues that could come into play at any particular set of decision points.
What about the legal and the regulatory environment that you face, Bill? What are the challenges there?
Well, again, a couple of things. First, the legal and regulatory domains typically lag the technological domains by a decade or more. What that means is there are potential risks and rewards that are present today that the law will not be decided or the regulations won't be decided for maybe as long as 10 years. And that intervening gap is a time of both opportunity and risk for organizations. If one is too aggressive in adopting new things, then you run the risk of putting things at risk that you would not like to. If you're too slow to adapt the new capabilities or the new opportunities, then you run the risk of market obsolescence and irrelevance. So the legal and regulatory domains, in addition, there is an appropriate level of attention and concern from regulatory bodies to ensure that the consumers and the citizens of a country and of a locality are appropriately protected against criminals and other abusive behaviors. So finding, once again, that balance point is a challenge where you have to stay engaged with the legislature as well as the policymakers as well as the society as a whole, so that the risks and benefits can be appropriately weighed out. So you don't want to see a situation where it's a knee-jerk reaction of absolute shutdown and control in an effort to prevent a perceived problem that can frequently happen with, well, let's say, representative democracies, where if the public is unhappy about something, then the representatives will take action. You want to make sure that those kinds of breakdowns are avoided by having a steady progression of appropriate legal regulatory structures that manage the risks at the societal level while enabling innovation and return on investment in the private sector.
I'd sure be interested in your comments about the threat actors that we're facing, Bill, and what that has looked like over the span of your career.
Well, I'd say, again, I started up the cybersecurity elements of my career in the 1980s. So I've been doing this a very long time. And I was actually involved with the very first iteration of computer viruses. I remember getting a call from the partners I was working with at one of the large consultancies saying, anyone know what a computer virus is? And this was the Morris worm, 1988. So explained to them what it was, because I'd actually met Dr. Cohen when he was an undergraduate student assistant at University of Southern California. So explaining what it was and what it meant, and then seeing that emerge into the areas of microcomputers and how computer viruses and worms, the monkey and the brain virus and things like that, which again you have to go to Wikipedia to see what those were about these days. But that's where it started. I had been involved in the defense industry, worked with mainframe security back in the early 1980s, and then with the advent of microcomputers and local area networking and the rapid adoption of client-server computing, at every stage things have changed very rapidly, very dramatically. So the adversaries back then were largely hackers in the let's say the traditional or the Hollywood sense of it, kids and maybe some amateur criminals that were trying to dabble with how they might cause disruption or gain reputation and credibility. Well, those kids have now grown up, and now we're dealing with full-on cyber criminals, people that are very capable, very competent, very motivated to find ways of extracting value from organizations, whether it's government or private sector organizations. If there's something valuable and they can find a way to get it, they're motivated and capable of doing that. And back in the late 1990s, I wrote a book called Netspionage, where I was talking about the possibility that we could use the internet and network-enabled tools to create state-sponsored access to foreign government secrets or foreign company secrets. The book was not a bestseller, but it was interesting. What we predicted, though, fell far short of the reality we now see today, where cyber warfare has gone well beyond just cyber espionage. So nation-state adversaries are now able to create significant threats to critical infrastructures in nation-states around the world. So we still have nation-states, we have criminals, and now perhaps terrorists at some point, and we still have hobbyist hacktivists, folks that are motivated perhaps by ideology or by political motivations of some sort to create disruption on behalf of their cause or to bring attention to something they believe warrants broader public awareness.
So when you think about critical infrastructure, Bill, what are the threats that keep you awake at night?
Well, I think the challenge here is that critical infrastructures like power and telecommunications were built back in the time whenever the threats were largely physical and were not cyber in nature. The ongoing expectations of the private or of the citizens of a nation that these services will always be available means the competitive intensity remains very tense, and you have to stay up with those demands. But if you have the ability as a nation state to take down the critical infrastructure of an opponent over a political dispute, whether it's geopolitical or whether it's economic or social, that's a very dangerous situation. So I think that the challenge for the future is finding the right kind of public and private partnerships that will allow the appropriate levels of investment by both governments and industry to manage the kinds of real threats that could disrupt and destroy those infrastructures, which of course would disrupt profitability for the attacked organizations, but would also create potentially significant military risk to the being defeated or being delayed in responding to serious threats. So it's a very complex challenge, and the folks at the national level that have to wrestle with those challenges have a very, very difficult balancing act that they have to work through. My job is to make sure that we have an appropriate level of protections in place to deal with those things that we can prevent, detect, and respond to within the operational construct of our business models.
Speaking of that, Bill, the controls have had to evolve as the threat spectrum has evolved. Are there any particular rules or tools that you find particularly useful to you today that our students might like to be aware of?
Well, I think perhaps it's because I started off as an intelligence officer back in the 1970s, whenever I was in the military. I think the use of threat intelligence technologies and detection abilities and services to inform the risk ranking and decision prioritization of various activities is something I find particularly interesting. The advent of data analytics to, once again, given the full range of threats that are possible in a complex ecosystem, it's difficult to do everything, especially everything quickly. So being able to prioritize those based on an analytical model that says these are either the most likely to be hurt or the most dangerous if they are hurt, those tools help us do a better job in any organization with putting our limited resources where they'll have the most benefit to the organization.
So how do you keep up with all this, Bill?
Well, understanding first, I think it's Dirty Harry said man's got to know his limitations. So in the 21st century, everyone's got to know their limitations. And the challenge is you can't do it all. You can't know everything. It's impossible. And anyone that thinks that they can is fooling themselves. So the most important thing that one can do is to have a qualified team of competent professionals that are growing their own skills and abilities and knowledge on an ongoing basis. Adopting an attitude that there's always something else to learn, always something else to do is going to be important to being successful in these kinds of roles. But having that team is essential, and it may not be a team that's actually on payroll. It might be a retained team. It might be a set of advisors that are built up informally through relationships in other organizations, but no one can know everything. It's impossible. So build that network of capabilities, both internal and in your community, and be able to reach out and tap those resources as necessary to deal with the new and emerging issues that you're tasked with.
So looking down the road, Bill, what do you see coming at us?
More and faster. I think it's the velocity of change is so dramatic. It's going to continue to be challenging for this profession to keep up with the attack surface that's been created by the Internet of Things, as well as the velocity that comes with the increasing speed of communications interconnections. As we move into the next generation of cellular communications, it's going to significantly increase the near real-time communications or real-time communications capabilities. So detecting and preventing attacks that could disrupt life safety environments, that's what I'm concerned about in the near term and the near future. Is the benefits will be obvious, the threats and risk won't be as obvious unless there's energy and time spent understanding the potential attack surfaces that are being created with all these new capabilities that are coming to market so rapidly. And then doing that in a global context too. There was recently a situation where there was a publication in a foreign country that outlined a particular potential denial of service attack against a critical infrastructure. That report was unknown to many in the community. Turns out that critical infrastructure was in fact attacked by a security researcher that said, I wonder if I could do what they said in that project. They thought they were just going to do a little local test. It got loose and created some significant disruption in that infrastructure. So having that kind of global perspective, because there's all kinds of research going on in universities and in think tanks and in governments and in organizations around the world, and that information can get loose, as we saw in the aftermath of the Stuxnet events. The tooling that was used once it was dissected enabled a whole generation of attack methodologies to be developed by criminals and other bad actors benefiting from the hard work and research that somebody else had done to enable the first generation of attack.
Do you have any last-minute admonitions to our students as they start their careers?
Well, it's a tremendously exciting time to be joining this kind of field. There are virtually unlimited opportunities ahead of you. The challenge will be to decide where you want to start and where you want to go to. There are many different levels that are possible. One doesn't have to be the CISO of an organization to make a huge contribution or make a huge difference. As a matter of fact, I'd contend the most important work is typically done by the folks that work for my team, not by me. Those folks are the ones that are dissecting the problems, identifying alternatives, researching and implementing solutions that protect the organization against the kinds of disruptions or destruction that could otherwise attend to a successful cyber attack. So understand what your options are, move ahead, and be willing to learn and adapt and grow based on the changes that are unpredictable for all of us at this point.
Well, Bill, I really appreciate your insights, and I think we're very fortunate to have had you make your contributions to our program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.